Alright guys, I've got another comparison for you today. This one's between the Poco F2 Pro and the Oneplus Nord. Now before I get into this, I should mention that I bought both devices with my own money. I'm not sponsored by either. I'm not sponsored by Xiaomi, I'm not sponsored by OnePlus, I'm not sponsored by anyone. Let me move this over to this side because the OnePlus is very slippery and it keeps sliding. Yeah. I'm not sponsored by either one of these companies. These are my own personal devices and I am just comparing it and sharing my opinion with you guys. If you do not agree with me, that is your prerogative. This is my opinion, and if you're here to hear what my opinion is of both devices, as I've used both of them, then yeah, please do carry on watching this video. If you've already got your mind made up and it's going to be opposed by my opinion, then I don't know what to say. I can't really do anything about that. Everyone's opinion is going to be different. This is my own. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to start off by saying I believe the Poco F2 Pro, I don't believe, my opinion, having used both of them, is that the Poco F2 Pro is the better device. It is the device I prefer. It is my go-to phone. I much prefer using the Poco F2 Pro to using the OnePlus Nord, and I will go into why I believe this to be the case, and then I will also show an interview I did with my brother who had a different opinion to my own, and my girlfriend who had a different opinion to my brother, just to show us a variety of different opinions based on personal tastes and personal needs and what people look for in devices that they want to get. Okay, so why do I believe the OnePlus is the better device to the Poco F2 Pro? Well, for one, the size. The screen size of the OnePlus is much smaller, not much smaller, but it is smaller than the Poco F2 Pro, noticeably so. It might not look it when they're side by side, but when you hold it in the hand, or when you even look at it at a bit of a distance, because I tend to put my phone on the kitchen table while I'm doing stuff in the kitchen, cooking, washing dishes, whatever the case may be. I tend to have the phone on the table, full screen, watch a YouTube video, and I sort of watch from a bit of a distance. Yeah, being that with the OnePlus Nord, it's just not the same. It's quite a lot smaller, and it doesn't help that it has this cutout here. I really don't like that. I just can't get over that. It's just hideous in my opinion. The Poco F2 Pro has no such thing. Completely clean. No imperfections on the screen. It's just a very, very nice screen. In terms of looks, again, I much prefer the Poco F2 Pro. It just feels, it is thicker. It is a thicker device, but it does have a bigger battery. And it is noticeably heavier than the OnePlus. The Poco is quite a bit heavier, but I quite like that. I quite like the feeling of solidity when I pick up the Poco F2 Pro. It's very solid, and I quite like that solid feeling. In terms of the build material, well, the Poco F2 Pro is metal, and you can feel the cold. Like as I'm holding it now, I feel the coolness of the metal. When I pick up the OnePlus, I don't feel that. It actually feels warm, which it can be a bit nasty sometimes, but yeah, in terms of how it feels overall as a package, it feels really good. I'm not gonna lie to you, the OnePlus Nord feels exceptionally well made, and it's just hard to tell, apart from the warmness, I guess, it's hard to tell that it's actually plastic. It sounds plastic, to be fair, but when you hold it in your hand, it feels really solid and it feels thin, which is, I guess it's nice. The thin feeling is nice, but I much prefer a solid feel. I don't mind the thickness at all, actually. I quite like how it feels. It feels really substantial, and the cool feel when I pick it up. It's very good. I really like the build quality of the Poco F2 Pro. In terms of screen, we already established the Poco F2 Pro is quite a bit, not quite a bit, it's a bit bigger than the OnePlus Nord. But in terms of the quality of the screen, there isn't much in it, but the OnePlus Nord does seem to be of a higher quality. It has this, it's hard to describe, but it's what I've noticed on the OnePlus devices compared to the Poco. I compared this to the OnePlus 7 Pro. The video will be in the description, and it's the same thing here. The OnePlus screens tend to have this glossy quality to them. They look really nice, very glossy. I like the blacks. I feel like there's probably a higher bitrate screen, because sometimes on certain images with blacks, the black is a lot better, which is interesting to say because they're both AMOLED, but the blacks are better on the OnePlus than they are on the Poco. The Poco has a tendency sometimes in certain scenes to crush the blacks a little bit. The OnePlus, I haven't noticed that on it at all. The OnePlus screen looks very good. That's not to say the Poco screen doesn't look very good. It looks very good, and to my eye, the Poco screen is a lot more color accurate as well to the OnePlus. But overall, given the size advantage that the Poco F2 Pro has, I prefer using the Poco F2 Pro screen to the OnePlus's screen, even though the OnePlus just has that little bit more quality to it. But overall, I would go with the Poco F2 Pro just because of the size and the lack of a cutout. That cutout is very distracting. For me, it's just a no. It's a no. Now the elephant in the room here, the refresh rate. 60 on the Poco F2 Pro, 90 on the OnePlus. And I said this before in my previous video comparing the OnePlus 7 Pro to the Poco F2 Pro. The refresh rate is just a bit of a, it's not a factor for me. I honestly couldn't care less. Like when I went to OnePlus, of course I noticed the smoothness of the OnePlus, but it's not a big a deal for me. Honestly, using the 60 Hertz on the Poco F2 Pro, it's whatever. It doesn't make much of a difference. I should mention, I do have an iPad Pro, right? This is my iPad Pro, 120 Hertz. So I do know about high refresh rate screens. I do use an iPad Pro, and I'm telling you, I just don't notice. I have never once used my iPad Pro, moved to my to my Poco F2 Pro and thought, oh my goodness. I have never once. I don't even notice the 120 Hertz on the iPad. It's just whatever. It makes no difference to me. I guess when I'm writing with a pencil, it's really smooth and it's almost one-to-one. Really, it's quite impressive. But day-to-day usage, the refresh rates is meaningless to me. It really is. But if refresh rate is that important to you, then I guess you'd be looking at OnePlus Nord anyway. But if you're like me and you don't really give a damn about the refresh rates, I just don't, honestly, then it's going to be the Poco F2 Pro in that regard. Why else do I believe the OnePlus to be the better device? Well, right, so in my previous video, I had comments about running the speed tests simultaneously being a bad idea or being whatever the case may be. So I thought this time I'll run them one at a time, and here are the results. This is quite reminiscent of the results that were achieved by the OnePlus 7 Pro compared to the Poco F2 Pro. The OnePlus 7 Pro, just like the Nord, did quite badly on this. Moving on to another reason why I think the Poco F2 Pros is superior to the OnePlus 7 Pro is the user interface. This is MIUI 12 and this is Oxygen OS on the OnePlus. In my opinion, Oxygen OS is boring. It's absolutely boring. I much prefer the aesthetics of MIUI 12. Here's a control center on the, is that what it's called? I don't know. Here's the control panel, center, whatever the case may be. On the MIUI 12, here it is on the OnePlus. Boring. I have chosen to go with the split navigation, split notification and toggle menus. On the MIUI 12, you have the option to use the old MIUI 11 style and have them combined, but I much prefer that. And yeah, this is just boring, absolutely boring. I really do not like the look of Oxygen OS. I still prefer the look of MIUI 12 to Oxygen OS. And MIUI 12 has a lot more features than Oxygen OS does. So for example, if I were to go onto my Instagram feed, well, for one, you can have, did you see that? You can have dual apps. I'm not sure if you can have that on here. You probably can, I don't recall. But anyway, go on here. I have the option to then, let's say, let me open eBay. Floating windows. You don't have that on the OnePlus. Very handy. And you can pretty much open any app at all. Any app. You can just scroll through all the apps that you have downloaded. You can open any of them in floating window, even games. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but you can. Expand that a bit, as big as you can get. But yeah, you can do that, which is great. No such thing on the OnePlus. Another thing you can do on the MIUI 12, you can see my Instagram is blurred out. You can do that. When you go into the options for the app, as I just showed, you just click on blur previews, and now when you go into your multitasking, preview is blurred. Now these are just a few features that MIUI 12 has that are completely, absolutely brilliant that the Poco doesn't have. I think I'll do a separate video on my favorite features of MIUI 12 and I'll put it up at a later date. But when it comes to user interface, MIUI 12 is far superior to Oxygen OS in my opinion. I much prefer all the additional features. Check this out. You go into the calculator, look at that. Floating calculator. Make it more transparent, make it less transparent. It's brilliant. I much prefer that. And I like how MIUI 12 handles the keyboard. No gap. But then the OnePlus puts a massive gap there. I do not understand why OnePlus does this, but I absolutely hate it. It's just such a waste of screen real estate. I don't get it. Anyway, and dark mode, as you can see, it's enabled there, and as you can tell, it's enabled here. Dark mode affects the wallpapers, the super wallpapers. So you can see it's like daytime now, and I want to put it into dark mode. It's nighttime now. Amazing. And dark mode has an impact on all apps. So as you can see, I'm in dark mode on the OnePlus, but Amazon isn't in dark mode. Look at that. It's in dark mode on here. Dark mode affects pretty much every app, obviously apart from, like, you know, browsers. The cameras, again, it comes down to preference. In night mode, the OnePlus is superior. In daytime shots, I prefer the look of the Pocos. The selfie camera, again, I prefer what the Poco does. I prefer its AI features. I prefer how it takes portrait shots. The cutouts are much better on the Poco than they are on the OnePlus. I prefer the user interface, much prefer the user interface. You can get most things done without having to leave the camera UI. You try to do similar things on the Poco, it takes you out of the camera UI and you lose your shot composure or whatever the case may be. I hate how it takes you out of the shooting experience. The the Poco, you can do most things without having to do that. I prefer the pop-up camera, because then when I'm not using it, it's not in the way. This is ridiculous. I hate the pill cutter with the two. It's just excessive to me. The macro camera is a joke on the Poco F2 Pro. It is much better on the Poco when it comes to video recording. I think they're pretty much on par, but the Poco F2 Pro has the advantage of 4K 60, while the OnePlus doesn't. Oddly enough, the OnePlus would shoot 4K 60 on the front cameras, but the Poco F2 Pro will only do 1080p on the front cameras. So a bit of a toss-up. But in my opinion, I prefer the Poco F2 Pro for the camera. Alright, this is 2x zoom. The Poco doesn't support recording or 4K in 2x zoom by the looks of it. Alright, the Poco doesn't support 4K 60 or 30 on the front camera, so I'm just recording the OnePlus at 1080 30. In terms of battery, they are both good. They'll both get you through a day, but again, the Poco F2 Pro is superior. It has a bigger battery. It's just what it is. When it comes to charging speeds, don't care about charging speeds. I don't use the fast chargers because I'm trying to preserve the battery. The batteries of these phones, fast chargers, degrade the batteries faster, so I don't use a fast charger. The chargers are still in the box. I use a much slower charger to charge it because, again, I want it to last longer. So charging speeds, don't care. But I'm pretty sure they're on par. When it comes to absolute power, the performance of the Poco F2 Pro is just far superior to that of the OnePlus. The OnePlus, I've watched so many reviews of people saying the performance really good and there's no slowdowns or any of this or any of that, but I don't know about that because in my usage I've had many slowdowns, especially on some websites, or just more switching through apps. Sometimes it just bogs down. This is not supposed to be a speed test to see how long it takes to load up, but maybe I should do a speed test actually to see how long it takes to load up this page. So let me just close this down in incognito. Actually, let me just close down all the tabs. I don't want to close down all the tabs on my Poco. I'm still using them. So open a new incognito. Even with all those extra tabs open, the Poco F2 Pro is far faster than the OnePlus is. It's not even close. There's no point trying to pretend otherwise. It's just not. Now if we close, accept this, accept that, you see the Poco F2 Pro is a lot whiter than the OnePlus is. The OnePlus is very warm, even when it's been set to not, it's still really warm. Okay, so when it comes to just navigating and scrolling through this website, it's fine on there. Look at that. The OnePlus is not doing too great. What's the advantage of your 90 Hz display if this is high performance on websites? Just no point. It's just smoother on the Poco, even though it's got 60. And now the OnePlus is starting to listen. When it comes down to it, you can't deny the gulf in the performance of these two devices. You just can't. The OnePlus is just not as powerful as the Poco. The Poco is far more powerful. It's got a Snapdragon 865, and the OnePlus just hasn't. And that's all there needs to be said about that. When it comes to the audio performance, well, one, the Poco has a headphone jack. Oh, and an IR blaster actually, while we add that. Handy feature, I use it. The Poco doesn't have either, the OnePlus has neither of those, but they both have downward firing speakers. Neither of them are stereo speakers, but they're equally as loud, but the Poco F2 Pro has quite a bit more bass. Also notice how much room is taken up by the navigation there. Half my thumb compared to less than a quarter. Yeah. Anyway. The OnePlus and the Poco F2 Pro are quite on par, but the Poco F2 Pro does have a bit more bass. If you hear more of the low end, on the OnePlus is entirely missing. What does the OnePlus do better than the Poco F2 Pro? I guess you could make the argument for a 90 Hz display, but again, for me, that isn't a factor. I'm not going to pick a phone because of its 90 Hz display over another phone that has much better qualities overall and much better performance. For me, this is a device to go with. Like I said I was going to do at the start of the video, I will interview my brother and my girlfriend to get their opinions and see if it's any different to my own. If you're wondering, well, this is not this is Nova Launcher I'm using on both of them. I don't like the home setup of either of them, so I'm using Nova Launcher on both of them. Much prefer that, much cleaner. Oh, I didn't even mention the super wallpapers. Look at that. MIUI 12 is just the best, and check out the always on display. Oh, look. That does not get old. If I was gonna pick a phone for anything, it'd be because of that. I actually really don't like it. I just really don't like using it. I much prefer using it. Like, I just gravitate towards the Poco. Like, if I was to pick up any one of these devices, I don't like picking this up. This feels, it's thin, sure. It's really well built, yeah, sure, but it doesn't feel substantial. A bit too light. I just like picking this up. When I pick this up, it feels like a solid device. This is an absolute unit of a device. Much prefer this. Love it. I genuinely love this phone. The Oneplus Nord does nothing for me. It's really boring. Really, really boring. And I don't like how the fingerprint isn't activated. You have to tap or press the power button before you can use it, but you don't have that on the OnePlus on the Poco, you just tap and then that's it, straight in. Also, you have wick to raise, so you wick it up. Look at that, that is just so cool. So cool. Anyway, solid phone. Poco F2 Pro. Alright, so Gabriel, in your hand right now is the OnePlus Nord. I guess my first question to you would be, what are your initial impressions?
Well, on how it looks or how it feels?
All of the above.
It looks great, in my opinion. I mean, this little notch thing is not that big a deal to me. Yeah, it's a sleek looking phone, but I will say already there's a lot of fingerprints on the back, so obviously you're gonna need the case. Yeah, nice weight to it. It's a nice phone.
My initial impressions is that it's quite wide, it's quite thin. It feels a bit cheap in the hand. It doesn't feel quite metal-like. But yeah, that's my initial impressions.
Excellent.
It is a nice phone.
Okay, are you bothered about the fact that the frame's plastic? No, that's not the frame.
I did not notice.
The frame is plastic.
I did not notice, so not really.
Excellent.
I mean, it's plastic.
It is.
It looks metallic to me.
They did a good job.
What's
The frame.
is this?
Yes, the frame is plastic. Does that bother you?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so the frame being plastic has no impact on whether or not you would be.
No,
taking it out
I
of another
wouldn't
phone.
know I wouldn't know it was plastic.
What do you make of the size of it?
It's a nice size. I mean, I've got pretty big hands, so for me this is a tad bit smaller than I would go for, but it's a decent size.
The size is alright. It's a decent size. I mean, it seems quite short compared to the Poco, but yeah.
Are you a fan of the pill cutout on the screen?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but again, it's one of those things you stop noticing after you use it for a few minutes.
It's a bit creepy, but now I'm not holding it, I've got used to it.
Okay.
But it's not the worst thing ever.
What are your impressions of the screen?
What, the screen?
The display, yeah.
The bezels are a bit thicker than I would like, but the display is absolutely fine from what I can see.
Just fine.
I mean, it's just fine. It's not great. It's not perfect. I wouldn't buy it for the screen. Let's put it that way.
The screen's alright. It looks pretty bright. Yeah.
Nothing more to add?
Apart from that noise the neighbour's making.
Does the screen feel any different when you're using it to what you used to?
No. I mean, the whites are not as white as I'm used to, but
It doesn't seem as white as the Poco does.
Okay.
It seems a bit more... Nothing that's jumping out apart from kind of the whiteness of it.
Okay, but how does it feel when you're scrolling and all that stuff?
I mean, this page is taking quite a while to load, but it's not too bad. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel mega fast, but it feels like okay for normal use.
Okay.
If you're just scrolling through Instagram.
Okay. You have a Poco F2 Pro, do you not?
mm-hmm.
In purple.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do the two compare in terms of feel in the hand?
Okay, so I prefer the feel of this one.
Okay. Can you elaborate?
I mean, the Poco is heavier,
That it is.
like significantly heavier,
That's true.
which for me is a problem. I mean, the button placement is better on the Poco because, you know, having them on the same size, you're not going to be like, look at this, right? There's the volume button here right next to the power button on the other side, and you naturally hold the phone like this. So if you want to volume up, volume down,
Screenshot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then they've got this thing to switch between vibration, silence, ring. but it's got quite a tension to it. So when
It's hard to do.
when you're doing it, you're gonna be
Pressing the button.
pressing the volume button, and
I
then
did notice that myself.
yeah, it's overall. I'd say this one, even with that volume being on that side, feels better. A lot better.
Well, first of all, the Poco feels amazing in the hand. It feels robust. It looks expensive. I love how the side is red. It just helps.
Oh, you mean the power button?
The power button. I've never even noticed that before because I have a case on mine. I love how it's seamless. There's no camera notch. Yeah, the Poco just looks amazing. It just, the edge to edge thing going on.
The screen on the Poco, how does it compare to the OnePlus Nord?
Okay, so I mean, they have similar brightness. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah.
They're quite similar in brightness, but the whites are a lot better on the Poco. Alright, so the Poco is a bit smoother, but again, I'm not going to take much away from this for that, because
So which one feels faster?
My Poco.
The Poco feels faster.
Yeah.
The screen feels faster on the Poco.
Yeah.
So my question out to you: how important is the UI?
it's not important. I mean, unless it's atrocious.
I mean, the
toggles,
Poco
stuff like
wins
that.
every single time. I even just went to accidentally swipe the other side, but I realized the camera's there. But yeah, it wins every time. This is boring. It's bland. I mean, yeah. Okay. There's a notification that came through. Let's see how that looks. It just looks normal, but I'm definitely prefer the Poco. I think it's nicer. It's got way more features on it. Like, yeah, the Poco definitely.
Right, so I guess that brings me on to MIUI 12 versus Oxygen OS on the OnePlus. There's a number of features that MIUI 12 has that the OnePlus just doesn't have. Of these features, are there features that are deal breakers?
Yeah. For example, when I'm at work, I can go on YouTube and listen to like classical music or whatever I want to listen to, podcasts or whatever. And the main feature is that you can go on YouTube and then you can basically turn the screen off and the battery's still playing. I mean, the video's still playing. That's a deal breaker. I feel like this feature is a bit of a deal breaker. I don't know. I just really like how it looks.
Thanks for watching my comparison. And I'll be seeing you in the next video where I do the top 10 features of MIUI 12. Oh, I forgot to mention the haptics on the Poco F2 Pro are far superior. They are far stronger and they are way more nuanced. Like when you go into the toggles, the clicks you get when you tap on the toggle, it feels like you like actually clicking the button. It is impressive. Very good stuff. And then you get subtle taps and feedbacks in certain, like if you go on Instagram and you load up your feed, you get in some screens you get little taps, like when you scroll all the way down to the bottom of a page, when it hits the top or bottom, you get like a little click, a little tap. Very good, great stuff. I know that says me, might come across I'm some sort of Xiaomi fan, but okay, fine, yeah, I am a Xiaomi fan, but I am not biased in this video. I only have this Xiaomi air purifier because it's great, and I only have the Poco F2 Pro because it's great. If another brand was great, I would have that brand. It just so happens that it's Xiaomi. All right, good.